So I'm Dr. Dave Hughes. I'm from Scotland, live in Glasgow, but I spend a lot of my time over in the States over my journey. And it's great to be back at Pumps and Pipes. I spoke here maybe about 2 years ago about the company Novosound that I was the founder, or I am the founder of. I'm just not the CEO anymore, and I'll get onto that in a moment. But really, I want to talk, this is more a presentation about everything in my life and nothing in my life all at once. So it's really more of interest for those who are maybe embarking on a journey, those who are reflecting on a journey, and it's all about where does entrepreneurialism actually come from, and in particular with this event, Pumps and Pipes, I love the fact that it takes ideas from problems from one sector and then creates solutions over in another, and that's really been the life that I've done over the last 10 years or so. So I'm going to start just by thinking about where does entrepreneurialism, or where does my journey actually begin? I'm 42 years old. I know, I don't look it. But I have to think about, did it start 5 years ago, 6 years, 7, 10? Probably started about 25 years ago. I wasn't a 35 years ago, but I wasn't a 5-year-old entrepreneur. I am trying to speak slowly so that my accent cuts across the room. So if I'm running too fast, just please let me know. Right. But what was I doing at the age of 5, maybe 6 or 7 that got me into entrepreneurialism? I was watching a lot of films in the kind of late 80s. My top 3 films throughout growing up: Ghostbusters, Jurassic Park, and Back to the Future. And you might think, obviously, these are the greatest films ever made. That's why they're your favourite films. But if we think about what joins the 3 of these films as an impressionable 5, 6, 7-year-old up to 12-year-old kid in the west coast of Scotland. So I'm not from anywhere flashy like Silicon Valley. I'm from a place called Greenock, down on the west coast, down in Inverclyde. But as well as I like ghosts and trapping them, building dinosaurs out of dino DNA, and then going back to the future every now and again in a DeLorean, I started to think, well, all of these films at their heart is science, it's tech, it's entrepreneurialism, and it's a lot of fun. And maybe as a child, I was kind of thinking, I want a wee slice of that to myself. So, being a really cool kid, I went on to school, hung about the science lab, went on to university, got a physics degree, because I wanted to be like Peter Venkman and Egon Spengler. And then I went to university and got my physics degree. And then from the physics degree, I moved into an engineering doctorate, so Doctor of Engineering in Medical Devices, all about ultrasound. Built a research career over about 15 years, building and testing out ultrasound inside the mouth and various other orifices, let's just say. But from a physics point of view, I'm not a clinician, even though I introduce myself as Dr. Hughes and people get really excited. I'm a real doctor. I'm a doctor of engineering. That's a joke from a family who are all medical doctors. So where that really ended up for me was I founded a business called Novosound, and that's what brought me to Pumps and Pipes a few years ago. Me and my pal Dan, we commercialised the research that I was building in my company, all to basically sell new ultrasound probes. That was back in 2018, founded in Scotland. We built a manufacturing base over in Scotland, all underpinned by core IP developed in a university, but getting it out of the lab. And through that, we built a global customer base, customers in Texas, New York, California, onwards. But what I want to really talk about, rather than getting into the nuts and bolts of thin film ultrasound piezoelectric materials, is just where does this come from? How do you actually take an idea from a university or a hospital and actually make it into a business? So it all has to start with some curiosity. I've been working with ultrasound probes, some like the ICE catheters, catheters that we heard about earlier. This is an industrial ultrasound probe that's used for the inspection of turbine blades in aviation. And there's a lot of challenges with them. All of what goes on in the front of it, that means that they're just not you have to have a single probe for a single task, drives the cost up, and if it breaks, it sets your work back. Through my work, we started using piezoelectric materials, which had a lot of benefits. Very, very cheap to manufacture, very flexible, and can operate in harsh environments. So we started to replace the front of the ultrasound probe with piezoelectric materials, and it gave us a commercially viable business model. But because it solved my problem to start with in university lab, you can't build a high-growth billion-dollar business selling to academics, no matter how much you try. You had to get out of the university. You have to make the leap from thinking about like an academic and get out into the real world. And as the previous speaker said, this is all about speaking to the person that's going to take money out of their wallet and put it into your wallet, your customer. And customer money is the best money you can ever get as a business. Grants are fine, but you get tied up in bureaucracy. Investment is great, but you're selling part of your life away. You need customer money. So what we did was we just went on the road, took that technology that was on the previous slide, like a little small barrel probe, and where we actually ended up was a probe that looked like this. And this was our Novosound Halya product that was wide area corrosion monitoring. So we went from inspecting turbine blades in aviation and aerospace and ended up through customer discovery with a wide area corrosion monitoring. We've got these installed from Korea to Texas to Norway, and it was just such a great journey all in the kind of oil and gas industry. But we wouldn't have been able to get there had we not built a culture of innovation, but applied innovation towards the customer model inside the business. So right from day one, when we were 3 academics in a lab, then we became 10, then 15, then 20, then 30, 40, peaked up about 40. We had a culture of, you can have innovation and you can come up with cool stuff in your laboratory, but if no one's going to pay for it, it's not innovation, it's just cool shit. So we always had to kind of come up with the idea of how do you actually commercialize this and get people to pay for it, thus turning it from cool excrement into innovation. So we always embedded a culture of proper direct customer feedback loops into the innovation. And a lot of the people we hired were academics, so there were people who came from the research and they kind of wanted to, change the world, but had to get into this cultural mind shift of actually trying to start to sell stuff. And that was all about trying to align the technical development with the commercial need of the customer. And that was people in the lab building all the technology. At the top of the business, we had to actually be very agile in markets, and that was all about survival. So brief history of Novosound and our funding. We started in 2018. We did our Series A in December 19. We raised a good bit of money to scale up and have an absolutely phenomenal 2020 selling into aviation and oil and gas. And that's kind of where this product came from. December 19, great, cash rich. March 2020, an absolutely phenomenal start to 2020 for aviation and oil and gas as the pandemic took hold. Planes stopped flying and the oil barrel price went negative. So the market started to tell us something. All the customers just disappeared. The trade shows disappeared. Everything went quiet. So we had to start looking at what are we going to do with the business. We've got ultrasound, which is known from hospital environments, and we connect it to cloud platforms in order to put the data somewhere else for remote monitoring. We were doing it all with the Novosound Halya on oil and gas platforms. But we noticed as healthcare started getting more and more on people's front of mind, we got a lot more healthcare leads through our website, which allowed us to pivot towards wearable ultrasound. So taking ultrasound away from being something that you needed a clinician in person with you to do the scan, but move it to a very kind of low profile. It's on the arm there. Some of the images isn't great quality, but to start using it for wearable health applications. So we started moving it from the bladder to the lung and then onto the arm. And then when you get onto the arm, something weird happened. We started not working with healthcare providers. So we've made the jump from oil and gas over to healthcare. We started to get Silicon Valley tech companies come. And actually last night I went to Best Buy to try out the new Meta glasses with the Neuro Band. We were working on something very similar about using ultrasound instead, because we'd made the jump from where the customers in oil and gas had gone quiet to where the remote monitoring world was going in the post-pandemic world. And where we ended up was putting a blood pressure sensor on the wrist, allowing you to actually monitor blood pressure, measure blood pressure with no cuffs. So going from oil and gas monitoring all the way to patient monitoring or consumer monitoring, all about being disruptive in markets that will have you. And this grew as a big company. As I said, we were now not just one startup. We were Novosound Industrial, Novosound Medical, and Novosound Consumer. So even without actually moving company, I was starting to become a serial entrepreneur. But as you get beyond 10 people, 20 people, up to 30, 40, your role as CEO founder changes. I'm a tech guy, I'm a physics guy, a real doctor, and all this. I was starting to be a proper corporate businessman, and it wasn't really for me. So being a leader means making the right decision, not just for the business, but also for yourself. And trying to divorce yourself from your life's work can be difficult, but if it's the right thing to do, then it's the right thing to do. So 3 months ago, I decided it was time, after 15 years of research, 7 years of growing the business and getting to where we actually managed to do, to take a step aside to allow new management to come in, people who were corporate, people who'd been through the FDA, people who knew how to build business, allowing me to get back to the stuff that I want to do, the stuff that excites me, innovation, IP, commercialization. I'm not going back to being an academic and just, sorry, that's done. But I'll do all the rest of my other stuff to enable other people to do what I do. But this is probably the best thing I've done in my life. Novosound, best thing I did in my life up to that point. Take a step aside is actually, you don't really get to know what it does to you until you take a step and look at it. And I'll get to that in just a moment. So, I always like presentations that have 3 parts: past, present, future. For me, there's a bit of sadness. The Novosound is the past. It's still growing. I'm still a shareholder. Wish them all the best. But in the present now, what I'm doing, and this is just a very quick thing before I get into the thing I'm excited about. I've set up a consultancy, and this isn't a sales pitch because I've nothing to sell to you, just only my own knowledge. All about helping deep tech founders build real world businesses. A lot of what you hear on the stage at the moment is about taking products and technology, finding customers, and then what happens? How do you get the company off the ground? What do you need to know? The difference, different circle, is the fact I'm a founder. I'm an academic who turned into a founder who ended up growing a sizable tech company in Scotland that was sold all the way around the world. I'm not giving advice to the hospital or the university or the business. This is founder to founder. So if in the audience there are clinicians or academics or young people or just people who want a side hustle, that's what I've set this up to do, is to try and give some of that 7-year journey back to the people who may want to embark and have one of the rides of their life. However, caveat, anyone who sets off on this journey from university into business and onwards will have to deal with a lot of consultants. It's a fact of life. I don't want to be another C word. So, I want to practice what I preach. Novosound was my first startup. I always said it would never be my last startup or my second, third. But then I also don't want to just talk about business. Too many MBAs out there who'll just talk about it from a textbook. I need to keep my knowledge fresh. So, how do you start again? This is the serial part of what I'm doing. And this is the first time I've spoken about this idea as well. Done some teaser things on LinkedIn, getting the social media engagement stats up as a proper C word consultant. So, the best problems have solutions, and the best solutions are for more than one person. And the best business ideas come from when you see a big problem and you add a solution to it. So, I have to think about the last 2 years of my life. I was traveling around the world speaking to smartwatch manufacturers all about blood pressure on the wrist. And people would ask me, why do you need blood pressure on the wrist? I've got a cuff. Why do I need blood pressure coming off my Apple Watch? And the more I thought about it, they weren't asking about blood pressure because it's an easy answer. You can say it's a leading cause of stroke. High blood pressure is an indicator of stroke, which is a leading cause of early death. They weren't asking that at all. How many people in this room have a smartwatch on them? Okay, and how many of you read into that data that's coming off? It's something like 2 gigabytes a year is coming off your Apple Watch on data. Yes, and what do you do with this data? You can tell me how many steps you did yesterday. Great. 10,000. It's a made up number. We know that now. I can look at mine and it will tell me what my heart rate was 5 minutes ago. And every so often when I'm bored on a plane or a train or just kind of thinking about things, I'll open up my Apple Fitness and I'll get curves like this. This is cardio fitness from Apple Health, and for all the heart surgeons that's here, if you do think you need to talk to me after this presentation, come and see me. But what I notice is you get a graph. It has a y-axis with units, and I would fail the student who put this graph together because there's no units on it. I know that. But then what does 20 up to 50 mean out of the Apple Fitness? We don't really know. And then you get time at the bottom. And what I looked at this graph, well, that's quite interesting because it's obviously quite flat for a while. Then it drops down, and now it started to come up at the end of the year. It's interesting. As a data geek like myself, I go, that's interesting, but what does it mean? So when people were saying, why do we need blood pressure on a smartwatch? They're not saying, what's the health benefit? They're just saying, we've got so much bloody data. What are we going to do? What does it actually mean for us? How do you turn it into insights? So I started looking at the bottom and saying, well, that's month to month. That's the last 12 months of data. I can overlay context onto this and see where the last 12 months in Novosound was when I was going through my divorce from the company. It's when the lawyers got involved at exit. And then now, as things uptake, when I take 42 salaries off my shoulders, I lose 2 stone of weight, I have to keep cutting holes in my belt buckle as I'm feeling better once. So we've added context to the data. The context here isn't the same context that companies like Garmin or Fitbit or Pixel or Whoop or Oura Ring put on theirs, because they tend to Oura do the sleep time. Fitbit, Whoop, Garmin do it when you're in the gym. Then you go to work between 9 to 5, the most important time of your life. That's what we're doing here. We're all sitting here with your Apple Watches or data logging, but we're not using any of that context to actually work out what is your body telling us as you go into your work day, and what is your work day telling us about what it's doing to your body. So what I'm building at the moment is a new company called Halya. So I want to take your working day to hell yeah. So I've just called it Halya. I might use ChatGPT to come up with the name of the company. But hey, prompt engineering, that's what we're learning about today. So it's digital wellness for your daily life. Problem, burnout, stress, record highs, especially among the startup and CEO founders aged 42 from the west of Scotland and other people in the room. Our health apps that we connect ourselves to track fitness throughout the day, but they don't actually tell us much about it. So the gap is connecting all that health data to what you're actually doing in the day-to-day. And I'm focusing this a wee bit at work, but I had a great conversation with Stuart, who's around somewhere. It's like, what about patient insight of people who have to go to hospitals or doctors who have to work in hospitals? How do you link that data to who they're seeing and what they're doing? So the solution is, on your phone, you have a wealth of, as I say, 2 gigabytes of health data every year coming off your wrist. And then you've probably got terabytes of data on your phone telling you where you were, what you were doing, who you were meeting, a league table. You see at the bottom says people. This creates a league table. And bring this all together so that we can have actionable insights, not just over how you feel about a meeting or how you performed because of the activity, but mesh it all together so that for tomorrow's meetings or the next meetings, you can start getting coached from a biometric or a healthcare point of view. Plenty of AI coaches out there that talk about, just take some water, take a break between meetings. Some people thrive on stress, some people thrive on exercise, some people thrive on sleep. But so far, there's nothing that's taken it together to actually put it into the day-to-day of who and what we do to have happy work lives. Happy work lives mean you're probably happy outside of life as well. So the product vision here is for individuals to know their health and how it affects work and vice versa. But then if you think about where we're going with this, connected data, yes, it's all personalised on your wrist to your pocket. For HR departments, health insurers, people who run hospitals, the patients and doctors coming in and out every day, this links what we're doing in the 9 to 5 to how our bodies are responding with it so that we can actually, as I say, live more fulfilling lives and maybe have less of those downticks and V-shaped recoveries. And the beauty about this is I've just spent 10, 15 years working hardware. Hardware is hard. If you're doing medical devices, good luck to you. It is very, very hard. Everything in this kind of already exists. The hardware is already on 100 million wrists around the world. The smartphone now does enough GPU processing in your pocket to do all the large language models, so none of your personal health data needs to leave the phone. And just put analytics into the cloud layer to increase the enterprise dashboards. I'm going to wrap up because I can see this counter clicking down. But ultimately, where this is at the moment, I've got an MVP, I've built it so far. And as of January, not going to start beta testing through December when we're all getting off our Christmas holidays and stuff. Let's see how our Halya scores are going to be affected by a really dull January into a brighter February. And ultimately, that's a snapshot into my headspace on how I go from one business in an ultrasound space in oil and gas to medical, all the way now to digital health well-being. And I think that's the beauty of being able to come together in these type of events where there is an oil and gas person there's a aviation and NASA. We heard from an actual astronaut on the stage. That blows my mind. So yeah, it's a great journey to be a serial founder. I'm just at the very start of it, I hope. But if this has been intriguing to you, please feel free to reach out to me, and I hope you have a great day and all the best. 8 seconds to go. Not bad for a first time at this presentation. Thank you.